How difficult is it going to be to change the establishment in Washington, D.C.?
Well, you're beginning to see, I think, a taste of what is to come over the next 2 years, because this is just a real desire to want to, sort of clean up shop and to get on with a much cleaner, more focused, pro-growth agenda in D.C. And, the problem is, even on these spending bills, if Republicans have majorities in both houses, which will be the case in January, you still are relying on Democrats to get things done, given the rules in the Senate. And, when you see the activity online from Elon Musk and then the follow-up from President Trump, it makes it really tough. I mean, because it defies the bipartisanship that is needed to get things done.
But spending taxpayers' money shouldn't be easy. It should be tough. And that's the problem that a lot of people have got with this. They'll use technical terms like continuing resolution. This is just business as usual. Then Lisa goes through all the other things that are stuffed into it, and the general public sits there and says, what's this about? Right,
and I think that's where certainly the objection came from Elon Musk and others, to say, wait a minute, if this was a continuing resolution, which is just a stopgap measure, then let's just get over the hump so the government can continue to operate, but let's not do anything else. And this is the difficulty. When you've got a margin the way you do in the House and Speaker Johnson's dealing with, you need the Democrats to help you, because you are not enjoying unanimity on the part of the Republicans. That's the issue.
That said, this was led by Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson started the tit for tat by that $10 billion provision for farmers. Look, there's a bigger issue here, which is that ultimately some of the bigger conversations about entitlements, about certain health care issues, about other big policies, people aren't willing to have in an honest way. How much do you think that ultimately is the question? So you've got to kind of gussy everything up with all of these, cute little tricks and get something through to just not do anything.
Well, the discussions that they're having around this continuing resolution bill are what's called discretionary funding. It is not what you're saying, the entitlements. And that, as you rightly point to, that is the real problem, and it's causing disproportionately our deficit and the growing debt. There's no question. But President Trump has said we're not touching that. Now, what I hope is, with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy overseeing this DOGE effort, although it's not technically part of government, it can have a lot to do with the actual debate on policy. And I hope they're going to come up with something to define the debate, and hopefully it'll be clean up the way that these entitlements work, so we can begin to see how we can reform those, because that's going to solve our debt and deficit.
You're at an amazing vantage point, understanding how the sausage is made, having a lot of contacts, and also seeing the business world react and being a part of that. And I'm just wondering how much the efficiency that markets have been rallying on is jeopardized by the dysfunction of trying to fix something that feels very, very broken.
So what I can tell you at Moelis, we are seeing our clients pick up in a big way the dialogue, their deals being dusted off, those that have been put on the shelf over the last several years, in fact, turning into, we've even seen a pickup in the acceleration, if you will, of completion of deals. And I think it's all about the optimism coming from deregulation, the fact that we're going to have an administration that is not an adversary to a pro-growth agenda and to business. And I think that just tells you where we've been in this country. We have had and suffered a negative. It has been almost a war on a growth agenda over the last 4 years under Joe Biden. And so I think that's ultimately going to prevail over any doubts about whether Washington, in the end, will get something done, because I still sit here today and say they will get something done to fund the government.
Compare the mood to that in Europe. How different is it right now? People are fired up about America into next year and beyond. And by people, I mean consumers. Confidence is up. Businesses, confidence is up. Compare that to Europe right now.
Amazing. And I spent all week in Europe, and it is amazing the difference of being here, looking at the optimism, the momentum we've got. It's reflected in the valuations of assets here. And you can see the unleashing of not only strategics here, but our sponsor clients. Everyone is sort of, you can really feel it. In Europe, everybody's looking here. I mean, that's the amazing thing, because there's a huge difference in valuation between on assets here versus Europe, and you would think, well, that would push people to go look for bargains over there. You've got investors and folks looking here. Everyone's coming here. It is striking. And now look, their political situation also is now the additional stumbling block that they've got to deal with, which doesn't bode well.
Yeah, whatever the fight looks like down in Washington, D.C., I think we should be very clear on a relative basis. The mess is elsewhere. Canada, Germany, France. The list goes on and on and on when it comes to political instability.
And it's not necessarily because those politicians are that much worse than the U.S., but it's that the U.S. corporate sector has managed to outperform again and again and innovate. And ultimately, that's what it's going to have to come back to.
I'll always say this, though. In our country, you look at the size of government as a percentage of GDP, we are much, much smaller, even though we, as a limited government conservative, you compare that to the EU, and they're 50%.
France pushing 60.
Yeah.
Eric, it's good to see you, buddy.